We are a brand new muscle car, and we build RestoMods. We're talking cars that look like a classic, that drive like a brand new car. Mustangs are our specialty, and we're setting out to build the ultimate 67 Fastback. Brand new muscle car's been around 19 years. And over that time, we've evolved, we've changed, we've grown. This facility we're in now is by far the best facility. It is 10 acres, 30,000 square feet under roof, right in the middle of town. And the coolest part about it is, it's an old Ford dealership. Built in 1965, we have photos of Henry Ford II, the Deuce, here cutting the ribbon. Selling Mustangs, selling Broncos. It's amazing. It gives me goosebumps thinking about it. It's just the coolest thing in the world. And the customers love the nostalgia.
These cars that we restore were sold new here in the 60s and 70s. And we just love that. It's the nostalgia of it's great. Most of our customers are doing these projects because of nostalgia. We obviously have nostalgia and love for the cars. So to be in an old Ford dealership, it's just amazing. The shop we're in right now, we've got mechanical behind us. We've got metal and body to my right. Up on the hill behind us, we've got a separate building, which is the paint shop. And then we've got 10 acres of parking lot. It's unbelievable. We're very busy. This place is jammed full of work. If you come by, you might notice out back, there's a little bit of a junkyard feel, but I can promise you, those frames, those bodies, those parts, those cars, like that 51 Merc out there, that's a future project.
We're going to talk about superchargers for a minute. There are three main types that are used in 60s and 70s model cars, like our car here. You have a positive displacement supercharger, which is here, and then you have a centrifugal style supercharger, which is here, and the third way is a turbocharger. We're not going to use a turbocharger on this car, so I'm going to leave that out for now. So we'll start off with a positive displacement. These bolt directly via a manifold to the top of the engine. The air comes in here, the belt turns these impellers, that compresses the air, so it sucks it in here, forces it out here, down through what's called an air-to-water intercooler. When you compress the air, it heats it up. So we have to find a way to cool it down before it gets into the engine. Typically with these, you can see almost 100-degree temperature drop between the supercharger and the exit air, which is huge. Instant gratification. Torque right here, right now. They make great power. The downside is they take up a lot of room. On a hood challenged car like the car we're building now, this simply won't work. We wouldn't be able to shut the hood. So what we're going to use on this car is a centrifugal style supercharger. Now how this one works is you have a belt that turns the pulley, that turns the impeller. This is basically half turbo, half supercharger. The air gets in here, gets compressed, goes around this housing and out of the discharge tube. In the early days, in the 60s and 70s, there were some cars that did come with superchargers on them. They ran very low boost, and what I mean by boost is what this is artificially putting into the engine versus what the engine can draw on its own. They measure that in pounds. In the early days, they just ran it straight to the carburetor. Very low boost levels, 5, 6, 7 pounds. This particular setup is going to make around 750 horsepower, so we're moving a lot of air through here. It's hot. So how do we fix that? Well, this is what we use, an air-to-air intercooler. This fits right behind the grill. What happens is the compressed air comes out of here, goes through a tube, comes in here, and if you look in here, it's literally a radiator for air. As you're going down the road, the air flows across this just like a normal radiator for your engine, cools the air temperature. On something like this, you could probably see anywhere from 40 to 80 degrees difference. So in this particular car, what we're gonna do is we're gonna try and get as much cool air into the car to make the most horsepower we can, and this is how we're gonna do it.
Brand new muscle car Mustang RestoMod, presented by Classic Industries and brought to you by Chris Alston's Chassis Works, the home of higher technology. Old Air Products, cooling the classics. And by American Muscle, the aftermarket muscle car experts.
senior in high school and I was just looking for a little job, and Brandon's my stepdad, so I started to come work here. I just started off changing tires, doing suspension. Now I've worked my way up over to here to start working on all the engines. I like it, it's just a passion of mine. I've always liked getting my hands dirty and turning wrenches, breaking knuckles. I've been here for about 2 years so far, and everybody was really helpful, and whenever I needed a hand, they wouldn't mind to show me, take me under their wing, and treat me like I've been here for a long time. There is pressure because there's so high-end cars and one little mess up and it can cost a bunch of money. But since I've been doing this for so long and everybody's helped me out, I just take my time, quality over quantity. This is a 1971 Bronco. It has a 5.0 engine. It has a 3-speed, 3-on-the-tree transmission. I have not met the owner, but I do know he wants it all back original. I've started on it on the frame and to where it is now. Stripped out all the suspension, sandblasted it, painted it, reinstalled it. We sent the frame off to powder coat and got it powder coated. Then they painted the cab, set it on. I do like the green, it is nice. And then I started doing all the mechanical work, putting the transmission, the engine in, running all the lines. All that's left is to reinstall the camper shell, the front seats, the rear seats, the front windshield glass, and then this will be ready to go, right around a month or so. But since this is a 3-on-the-tree, I won't be able to take it on a test drive because I've never learned how to.
Here at Brand New Muscle Car, we repair a lot of AC systems, whether they be factory-style AC systems or installing aftermarket systems. Old Air Products has been around for a long, long time. We trust them. They make high-quality stuff. Hey, I got a problem. I've got a bunch of cars out in the shop. A lot of them have original-style air conditioning on them, and you can't find that stuff anymore at your local parts stores. I understand you have a ton of that stuff. You keep it in stock. What have you got? What can you help me out with?
You know, we kind of cover everything from a bunch of the Chevrolet stuff to the Ford stuff from 78. Some of this stuff goes all the way down to maybe the 50s on some of the hard-to-find expansion valves and things like that. We do the plate and fins, we do the accumulators, we do receiver dryers, and you can see like we've even got the factory, I call it stamping. We also rebuild these things. We also do POA update kits. You can't really rebuild the POAs anymore.
Correct.
So, you know, we've got something that looks just like it right here, but instead of taking it from a suction throttling type system, it actually will go to a compressor cycling system, and we'll use a thermostat for that.
And this is a big deal when you switch to 134A from 12, right?
Yeah, because of the pressures and everything are going to be different. We do blower switches, which is a big warranty item on these older units, and we also do all the cables.
A complete car that has an original intact AC system, I can take some of that stuff off, send it into you, get it rebuilt.
Some of it we can, yeah, but when it comes to things like the evaporator coils and stuff, it's just hard to have a factory set up to build one evaporator. But we carry a lot of that stuff already, and especially in the plate and fins. And we carry a lot of the hard-to-find expansion valves, block valves. We've got a lot of the old thermostat control.
Right.
So when it comes to O-ring replacement parts, there's not very many people, if any people, that are really doing this. But it's good for us, and it's good for the customers to help them out as much as we can.
Well, it's a 69 Mach 1 S code. That's a 394 barrel. According to the Marty report, they only made 4 of them in this color with these options. 390, automatic, C6, power steering, power brakes, AC, and it all works. I've got other stuff I was going to do to it, but I decided I need to try to keep it as original as I could. And I've taken some liberties with it. I put different valve covers and breather on it, some exhaust cutouts, but other than that, it's like it was when it rolled off the showroom floor. I normally restore 69 Mach 1s. This is my 7th one. Drove to Pennsylvania to get it. Got off a midnight shift, drove 30-something hours round trip nonstop. Stripped it down and saw how special a car it was with no rust or anything in it. I decided I'd hang on to this one. When I stripped it down, it had the original interior in it. Was pulling out the sound deadener and the carpet and everything, and right next to the build sheet there was a note, 2 notes, and one of them said Wanda with her phone number in Pasadena, California. And the other one was directions to Wanda's house in Pasadena, California. So I named the car Wild Wanda. I have not contacted Wanda. She's probably 80-something years old now, but I have Googled the number before, and it's still a valid number. It's Indian Fire Red. I had to have it special made, and I actually painted it twice because there was a couple of spots on the quarter panel that were about the size of my little pinky fingernail that I didn't like, so I stripped it back down and painted it again. I did all the body work, interior, everything, even rebuilt the motor by myself, and my wife helped me out, of course. You won't find a nicer group of people, car folks, than Mustang people. Well, I mean, they're named after the P-51 fighter, the P-51 Mustang that helped us win World War II. And it's Detroit iron, so it speaks American. When people find out I did everything, they want to know if I would do one for them. You got to have a passion for it. When you make a business out of it, sometimes you lose your passion, and I don't want to do that. This will be here the day I die. I'm not getting rid of it. She's special. I'm hanging on to it.
A lot of classic cars came with air conditioning, factory style like this. We can either repair the factory style or we can install the old air product systems. They can provide us with both the factory stuff and the aftermarket stuff. So Scott, we're putting one of your old air systems in our TV car.
Correct, this is our hurricane system.
What are some things you can talk about to people that try and do this on their own or guys that aren't really familiar with it?
When people are running the duct hoses, they're not stretching the duct hoses, and they're squishing them. And you don't want to do that because that's going to affect your airflow. The second thing that we've seen is when the expansion valve is connected to the unit and you uncoil this hooks up to your suction tube. It's your sensing device. I've seen where people didn't hook this up, so they didn't have any control on metering the refrigerant into the unit. And then we provide this with this clamp, and we put this at a 9 o'clock or a 10 o'clock position. And sometimes people will put this on here and not put the rubber cork tape that we supply with it. So it allows some of the ambient airs also to affect the sensing bulb.
In there and not let it read right.
Yeah, exactly. One of the other things we've seen is after they have a system put in and they charge it, all of our systems will work on like 28, 29 to 32 ounces. But we provide a safety switch in most of our dryers, a Schrader valve to go ahead and screw into one of these ports, and then I'll put our pressure switch on. We do that for two reasons. One, sometimes switches can go bad. This will allow you to change the switch out without exhausting the refrigerant.
Without losing all your freedom.
Yeah, and the other thing that we do is a lot of people want to use a mechanical driven fan, and they find out they have head pressure issues because they're not moving enough air during the idle. Then they turn around and they purchase a trinary switch versus the binary. The binary has a low setting to protect it if you leak your refrigerant, and it will turn your compressor off so you don't damage it. The high side, of course, is if they overcharge it or they don't have enough airflow, that won't blow a hose,
right,
it'll turn the compressor off. So the trinary has an additional setting in it. You ground one side of it and the other one will go to your electrical harness for your fan controller, and that will go ahead and turn on your condenser fan.
Your electric fan,
yeah, exactly. The other thing that we've seen is when they undercharge because they have this condition of not moving enough air, their head pressure will be in a normal range. But when they do that, this is like your radiator and your antifreeze, right? You run it low, your engine gets warm. When you run low on your refrigerant, the cooling refrigerant that comes back to the compressor along with the oil, it's not lubricating it. So the life of your compressor, it won't last as long and they'll damage it. When they damage a compressor, you just don't replace the compressor. You really need to flush the system, and you need to change your receiver dryer because, you know, your receiver dryer is liquid, it has a desiccant bag in it, it's a filtered also.
When these go bad, I mean, you get metal, aluminum shavings, you get all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, you pretty much need to take everything apart and flush it, which kind of leads me into what you've got your hand on, this condenser. You know, these new parallel flow condensers that we use, you can see they have little micro channels in them. And so these things are baffled this way. And if you get metal particles in here and things like that, a lot of times you're not going to get that out even if you try to flush it. So you have to really be very careful about looking at the refrigerant that you exhaust and see if you see any metal or anything in it.
All right, thanks again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That's why we always try to put the car together now before it goes upstairs for body and paint. If we have to change something big, now's the time to do it.
Brand new muscle car Mustang RestoMod, presented by Classic Industries and brought to you by Smeding Performance. building high-performance turnkey crate engines for over 30 years. Summit Racing Equipment. Build it with Summit Racing Equipment, the world's speed shop. And by Quick Latch. No tools required to operate.
I'm Matt Anderson, Curator of Transportation here at the Henry Ford. Mustang serial number 1 was actually sold in, of all places, St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada, which is kind of ironic when you think about a car that was pitched as being all-American in terms of the name and even the red, white, and blue badges. But our Mustang is technically a pre-production car, so it is one of the practice cars, if you will, that was used to help familiarize workers and supervisors with the Mustang's manufacturing process. Several of these pre-production cars were made with the idea that they would be sent out to dealerships, so every big dealer would have a car in the showroom. And customers wouldn't buy that pre-production car. They would go in, look at it, then fill out an order for their actual car, which would be delivered a little bit later. But Stanley Tucker went into this dealership in Newfoundland, some 2,000 miles from Dearborn, and the theory is the earliest built cars are the ones that were sent the farthest away, just because it was going to take longer for them to reach their destinations. That's how Serial 1 ended up in St. John's, Newfoundland. Stanley Tucker was an airline pilot, fairly young guy, 33, not a baby boomer, but the younger sort of person that Ford was targeting with this vehicle, and he just fell in love with it when he saw it. And he must have been quite a salesman himself, because he somehow talked the salesman there into selling him Mustang serial number 1, which shouldn't have been sold as a pre-production car. And then he actually used that car. I mean, we have photos of him driving the car in the winter. It's a little scary when you look at those photos now, seeing the ice and the salt and the mud on the rocker panels, but you know, it was just his car. He put about 10,000 miles on the odometer before he finally worked out his deal to give it back to Ford Motor Company in exchange for the millionth Mustang. You know, just the kind of person you would have expected to buy a Mustang and enjoy it. So it's fitting, I guess, even if it's a little unusual to think of a Canadian buying this all-American car.
Today we are going to mock up the engine and transmission in the car and see how much room we have over by the battery box for the Supercharger head unit to see if we can get all of that to fit in the engine bay without cutting any sheet metal.
Right now we're measuring off the bell housing back to where the shifter mechanism is in the transmission, so we can put a hole in the floor of the car so that when we mount the transmission in, we can push it up where it needs to be, and we'll be able to set the angle and it'll be able to go in completely the way it's supposed to.
These transmissions are pretty big to fit in a pretty small tunnel, and we try not to modify the tunnel any more than we have to. So in this particular case, we're tilting the engine down to come up with a little more room to get the input shaft aligned to the crankshaft of the engine. Once it's all assembled, then we can jack it up into place. From the factory, these cars come with this bracket here. This is where all your parking brake assembly bolt to the swivel and the cables and all that. So since we're using a Tremec transmission and a custom cross member, we're going to eliminate this bracket on this car, and we'll use an electric parking brake on this one. All right, now we're going to put the mounting hardware in for the transmission cross member.
So this piece is part of the bracket here, and it's supposed to go through the frame rail, but it's longer than the frame rail is. So we'd either have to cut it and still drill the holes to get it to go through, or we're going to weld this bracket to the frame rail and kind of simplify the whole situation.
Once we're done with mock-up, we'll pull all this back out. We'll go back in, clean all this up, respray it with bed liner, make it look all nice and pretty again. Then we'll move the jack out of the way, let the car down, put the headers in, and see what we got.
Boy, those just barely sneak in there, don't they?
We're using a mid-length header for a couple of reasons. It gives us extra ground clearance, they fit the car better, spark plug access is very easy, and in an application like this, where we have a supercharger, a good mid-length header is going to do everything we need it to do. Well, we were kind of expecting that, so not by much.
So here's the motor.
Running out of room fast.
All right, what we got, fellas?
Well, I'm kind of glad you're here. So we have the head unit mounted, and like we predicted, we're very shy on room on that side. How do you want to proceed? Do you want us to really try and make a custom set of brackets and condense all this down and try and get it all to fit into the stock sheet metal, so when the hood's shut, it gives away nothing?
I think that'll look good.
Yeah. It looks like it's good. Or do we poke a hole in the fender and put the air-to-air out front and let everybody in town know you've got a supercharger? How sneaky do you want to go?
If we can bring it in tighter and hopefully keep from cutting the
Fender apron?
yeah, obviously that'd be ideal.
I mean, it's going to be down to millimeters. It's going to be tight, tight, tight.
At least we know someone that can make the bracket.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, I'll get Chris and Dan over here.
Yeah.
That's the plan. We're either going to make some shorter brackets, or we're going to go with a different radiator, or both. So if you're game, I'm game. We'll see if we can't make it work.
Let's give it a whirl.
Right on. That's what I want to hear.
Anybody want to lick my fingers?
Stop.
No, no.
Just asking.
No.